Hey guys, Jody here from FoodStorageMadeEasy.net. I am really excited to share our presentation with you today on planning a year worth of food from your garden. So if you think about planning a year worth of food in terms of food storage, storing for emergencies, you're not necessarily talking about all your fruits and vegetables from your garden. You may be thinking things that are more long-term storage like wheat or beans or grains, rice, things like that. And those you don't have to worry about, using it up within a year. But whereas your garden food, part of the reason you want to have a garden is so you can have that fresh food, have that homegrown food all year round. And you're not necessarily going to plan to have it for some big emergency for a whole year. You just want to be able to eat what you grew throughout the year and maybe a little extra. And so in the free workshop, I did a little video showing you some of the things to think about with as you're getting ready to make your plan. And then I've made a really cool spreadsheet for you that will help you figure out how much you eat and how much you're going to need to preserve and how much you'll need to grow to be able to preserve that amount of food. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of my personal thought process on how I come up with these things, and I'll show you a little of my space, and it'll maybe get your juices flowing a little to think about your own situation and what you're planning to do this year as you make your plan. And then I'll walk you through the spreadsheet, show you a little how to use it. And obviously with things like gardens, there are no general rules that will be perfect for everybody. Your variety may produce a different amount than somebody else's, and your area you might not be able to grow certain vegetables or fruits. And so everything, and it can depend year to year even how cold or hot it was. And so they're going to be guidelines, and then I also include a little tracker page so you can kind of track your results each year and then adjust the spreadsheet for based on what you actually had happen. And it's never going to be perfect, but at least this will give you like a guideline, a general idea for where you can start, which is at least better than just throwing out a bunch of seeds and hoping that's enough to feed your family. So I'm going to take you on a little walk through my personal areas, and then we'll get into the spreadsheet. So I'm here in Utah. I have built some raised garden beds. We actually have a tutorial for those on our blog that I'll link to you. But so I do a lot of my smaller vegetables in these raised beds. I've got a bunch of them. I really wanted to get berries going in these littler ones here, but they always seem to die before I can get them. But I do have some good blackberries. In this one, I just have to weed around it. So I can grow a lot of vegetables there, and then I've got some flat space here to grow the more big, sprawling vegetables. And then I've got a few fruit trees which are in badly need of pruning. So we can grow here a lot of vegetables, quite a few of the fruit trees, and my kids like most of what I grow, and so I can kind of base my plan on what I'm able to grow here. Some things I have to buy from starter plants or start the seeds indoors just because of the growing time. And obviously my fruit trees are still very little, so I don't get much fruit for a whole family. But that's where you can buy from a farmer's market or something like that if you don't grow enough for what you need to eat for the whole year. So I'm fortunate enough to have quite a big yard space to work with. So that's, I can consider my space in terms of planning my garden this year. If you have a smaller space, then you may need to consider purchasing more, or maybe doing like a community garden, or really get into square foot gardening and try to get the most bang. Maybe raise plants a little more vertically on more trellises to get a little more bang for your buck on your garden space. Okay, so once you've figured out kind of what the foods you're gonna grow are, based on your area, based on what your family likes to eat. If your family doesn't like beets, you probably don't need to grow a year's worth of beets in your garden. But then you need to think how your family actually eats them. So do they only eat fresh? Well, then there's no point in growing enough to preserve it because they're not going to eat, canned green beans or something. But if they will eat other forms, then you want to consider that. My kids won't necessarily just go grab a peach off the tree and eat it, but if I bottle peaches, then they will eat, a quart jar of that a day if I let them. And so that's a consideration for me in how I'm going to prepare them. Also, it depends what tools you have at your house. So I have a water bath canner. These are really inexpensive. You can get them from even a yard sale, or order a kit on Amazon. I'll leave you guys some links for where you can find these things. But water bath canners are perfect for your jams, jellies, salsa, anything that doesn't need specific preserving of a pressure canner, you can do in your water bath canner. So high sugar and high acidic things. But if you're going to do vegetables, a lot of times you're going to need a pressure canner. Pressure canners feel scary, but I've never had one explode in my house yet. But you basically just follow the instructions in your manual or on the, on your extension website. There's lots of good information online for how to pressure can. So you can do, beans and any of your other vegetables in a pressure canner. And so that's going to give you those options. You're going to get canned vegetables. If you do pickles, you can do pickles in a water bath canner. So there's a lot of different options with canning. Canning does cause a little bit of nutrient loss, obviously, in the preservation. So that's something to be aware of as well. You can also dehydrate. So this is an Excalibur dehydrator. All you do is slice up your vegetables, put it on these trays, and then you dehydrate a lot. It makes really good like banana chips or kind of food for camping or just for snacking. There are also sometimes these trays that have a more of a wax paper liner. You can make fruit roll-ups like fruit leather. You can do beef jerky, which I guess doesn't really have much to do with your garden, but so a lot of stuff you can do in a dehydrator. There are also home freeze dryer machines, which I don't have yet, but I actually am getting one to borrow. And I'm gonna do some experiments on freeze drying versus dehydrating, see how difficult it is. Because dehydrating also, because of the heat, you do lose some of the nutrients as well, and the food will shrivel up smaller. And so then if you eat it dry like that, it's just a more condensed, denser version. If you want to rehydrate it into a soup or something, it'll take a little bit more time and a little more water. If you freeze dry food, then it just keeps it in its same shape, but removes all the water out of it. And so it's a lighter texture, a lighter consistency, and it does retain more of the nutrients because you're not processing it at the high temperatures. So those are kind of your two to three main forms of preserving. The one that people sometimes don't think about necessarily is freezing. Now, I don't have a big freezer in my house, but I do have one out in the garage that I'll show you that's actually been great. And a lot of times if your kids don't really like canned food, freezing is a way that they'll eat it without complaining because it kind of comes back a little more to a fresh state, a little more like normal. Freezing also takes way less time and resources, energy, canning jars, trying to do all of the water bath canning. It's a whole day, week, month process to process that much food. And so having a really good mix, just store it in freezer bags and throw it in your freezer is going to be a really good option as well. So, and you don't have to be limited. If you do some canned green beans, you're also welcome to freeze them. If you don't have time to can all your tomatoes and you want to just freeze a few bags of them, then you can process them later or make a batch of salsa later in the winter when you want fresh salsa. So pull them out from your freezer and you can go ahead and do that. So let me show you my freezer space a little bit and then we'll come back. So this is a freezer I have outside. It's probably about 4 feet tall. It's currently empty because last fall I had some children leave it cracked open and ruined all my freezer food. So I'm excited to restock this year. But it was like a couple $100 on a clearance at Sears. So keep an eye out for sales, or people always are selling these. If you get just a hatch kind of freezer, like the chest kind, they're a lot cheaper, and you can just dump a bunch of bags in there and have a lot of space if you're not too worried about digging through it, getting in and out, but you can organize it pretty well. I like this one because it has the shelves inside. And so that's another option for you if you have the space in a garage or something or in your basement to throw an extra freezer. And you can also get a full-size freezer that's like the size of a fridge if you're planning, if you hunt or if you plan to store a lot of meat and produce in your space, then that's another consideration. So one last space consideration, especially with more of the canned goods, is where you're going to store them as well, because you're going to need all those jars. If you have 500 jars, where are they going to go? The nice thing about canning jars is they're only about 1 quart tall, or you can even do it in pints. So if you have some good boxes, you can stick them under beds or behind bookcases, things like that. If you have a good storage room, cold storage in your basement, that's going to be great. But especially with canned foods, you want to try to keep them in moderate temperatures and without light. So that's going to help you with your keeping the shelf life longer on them. And so that is a consideration too. If you don't end up getting through them in 1 year, what's your tolerance level for how long you're going to eat it? Some people will push that to 3 years, 5 years, 10 years even. I know I cleaned out my grandma's food storage after she passed away, and she had quite a lot of older canned goods in there that we didn't decide to try to eat, but some of them seemed okay. So it's sort of your tolerance level for that. So that's a consideration when you're planning what to store, as well is what shelf life you're hoping to get, how quickly you want to rotate through them. And then, like I said, if you can keep the air or the light out and the temperature cooler, then that's going to extend the useful life on your foods as well. So thinking about all those things, let's go through the spreadsheet, and I'll make sure to give you guys a link to download your own copy, and I'll walk you through sort of how I came up with the numbers and my thought process, because like I said, it is very variable, but it helps you kind of go through just what you need to think about to come to those numbers, and at least get a starting point for this year, even if it's not perfect. Over time, hopefully you'll refine it based on the varieties that you're growing and how your area goes, and your own storage space and your own family's needs. And you might find that you think you're going to eat a can of peaches a week and you only eat one a month, so you never know. So hopefully that was helpful, and we'll catch you on the Excel tutorial in just a second. So hopefully all of that was helpful for you to think about what you maybe want to do with your gardens and with your storage for this year. So now I'm going to show you the monster spreadsheet that I have developed, and you may find this useful, you may find it overwhelming, but it helped me, even if I'm not going to follow it exactly, it helped me kind of think about the things that I need to think about. So let me show you how it works, and you can decide if this is going to be useful for you. What I did was took all the vegetables from the free planner that you got for being part of the Grow Your Own Food workshop. So it's all those same vegetables. So hopefully if those are in your plan, then this will line up for you. So what you're going to want to do is you look at which vegetable, and you can choose from a drop-down box how you're planning to eat it or store it. So if I'm going to do canned beets, then there you go. The serving sizes I made all just be 1 cup, but that's just for ease of measuring. You might eat a cup of vegetables. That was kind of my thought process. And then I converted into pounds about how many pounds 1 cup of that vegetable is. So 1 cup of beets is about half a pound. And I got those conversions so you can see with the asterisks down here from this tool here. And so I've taken a lot of different tools and spreadsheets and combined them into one for you. So then the only 2 columns you will actually need to fill in are how many servings per week. So maybe 5 times a week we're going to eat beets because they're so delicious. But this will actually help you to be able to see totals. No need to total it down here. I accidentally deleted that one. But it'll help you see, okay, so if I just need 7 servings a week of vegetables, 1 for each day, then maybe I don't need to grow so many things and store so many things. Or maybe I only want to do half a serving a week of it. So it just is going to vary depending on how much you think you're going to eat. So think about, and you kind of have to also think about what you're going to eat when it's fresh versus what you're going to eat when it's stored. So maybe if you're going to eat a ton more when they're fresh, then you may want to up your average a little bit to account for that. So those are all just kind of things to consider. So let's go with 5 servings per week of beets. That's going to give you 260 servings per year. And then this column here is for how many extra months of storage. So some people say, well, I want to eat it all year, but I also want to have a whole year supply worth of beets in case of an emergency. And if I'm going to be eating all of this, then 6 months from now, I'm not going to have a year supply of beets anymore. And so maybe they want to have, a whole 12 extra months, but then you're going to run into shelf life issues at that point. So I kind of like to say I want to have about 3 extra months of storage. So by the end, when I get through till the end of next summer, I still have 3 months worth of beets in my storage. So if some emergency happened and I had no access to a grocery store, nothing like that, then I could go, extend my time of food that I have, even though I've already eaten through some of it. So by putting in the 3 months here, it's calculated an additional 65 servings needed for that time period. So my total servings needed is 325. Then you start to get into, well, how much does that mean I need to grow and how much do I need to store and process? So here I found the average pounds per plant. So if I have 1 plant of beets, I'm going to get about 1/5 of a pound worth of beets from that plant. And so I'll get 2 servings per pound, because remember it was half a pound is 2 cups, or sorry, is 1 cup. And so then the average number of servings per plant is 2/5. So these are all automatically calculated in here for you based on what I input here. And so this will tell you the total number of plants needed is 130. So to get 325 servings of beets to last me a whole year plus 3 months, I need 130 beet plants. And then we go into how you're going to grow those. So I did it 2 ways. So some people do square foot gardening. So I put here, and you can see again the resources for here for how many plants go in a square foot garden. So I can do 9 beet plants per square. So I can have, how many squares does that make? I need 14.5 squares full of beets. So I know I need that many square feet, which is a lot of square feet of beets. You may not want to do that many beets unless you really, really, really love beets. And then I also calculated based on how many plants you can grow per foot if you're growing in rows. So rows do it a little bit differently, just the spacing's a little different. And so then how many feet of rows do you need is 22 feet. So if you have a big sprawling yard and you want to just have 22 feet worth of beets there, then that's how many you're going to need. Then I did another calculation to say how many jars you're going to need. So I looked at this resource, the 4 stars here. All of these are over down here at the bottom. So if there's anything on this list I haven't listed, you can go fill in these numbers from these resources. So I just kind of took a little time away from you by putting it all in one place here. So it takes about 3 pounds of beets to fit into a quart-sized jar, which means I can fit 6 servings in 1 jar. And so calculate that out. Based on my 325 servings I'm trying to get, I need 54 jars of beets. So again, you do these calculations and you kind of look at your space. So maybe you look at your shelves in your storage room in your basement or something and think, okay, well, I can only fit 200 jars total. So I need to limit my beets or else I'm not going to be able to have anything else. So that's kind of how you determine from there. And some people, if you're going to be doing more freezer storage, then you can look here. So a gallon bag a gallon fits 16 cups. I put 15 here just to be safe and to give you a little airspace in your bag. So if you just take it in cups, then it's going to be 325 1-cup servings, which would fit in 22 bags. So if you got 22-gallon Ziploc bags, then you could store your year plus 3 months supply of beets in your freezer. And so then here you can look at that. If you want to have it, separated, you could just duplicate this row and say, okay, well, I want to store 2 servings a week in jars and 3 servings a week in bags. And so you don't want to mess with these calculations because these are showing for the entire servings. So you could just have one that gives you the jar amount and one that gives you the bags. Now I didn't do a column for dehydrating or freeze drying just because those shrink down so much, and it does depend. If it is freeze dried, it's going to take up more space. If it is dehydrated, it's going to shrink down quite a bit. So that's just something that, and storage isn't as much of a concern there because you can kind of throw those in bags and throw them throw them anywhere. They'll stash a little bit. So hopefully that helps. So like I said, these two yellow columns are the only ones that you'll really need to edit. And some of these are things you're not really going to probably store, and so that's why you'll see some of the, the NAs that I have in the canning. Like, you're not going to can lettuce, you're probably not going to can watermelon. So these are ones, you know, that you may, like watermelon, you may freeze that, you may dehydrate that, that kind of thing. And some of these just may be for eating fresh. And a couple of them are weird with the weights, like corn and peas. Sometimes the weights depend on like how much the actual vegetable weighs, but that's including the husk. And so it's the numbers, if they seem weird, that's typically why. So, you know, you can't get that many. It's a lot of pounds, but for not that many servings, if that makes sense. And if you want to do things, so the reason I did a recipe here is because, like, you might only use tomatoes for your salsa or for your spaghetti sauce. And so that's just kind of for you to know that. And you may do just plain canned tomatoes as one, and then you may want to do another row. And so here's how you do another row. If you highlight this row here, and then you can go insert, I don't know if you can see that, but insert rows. Then it's going to mess up your color codedness a little. So if that bugs you, you can fix it, but you could just copy and paste. So if you're gonna, you can go Control C or Apple C, copy this entire row, or you can also right click and copy and paste it. So right click and paste. It's gonna give you all the same equations. So maybe you wanna have 1 jar of tomatoes plain and 1 jar of tomatoes sauce per week. So you have a jar of canned tomatoes, a jar of fresh tomatoes, and then I want 3 extra servings of each one. And maybe for my, so then here it's going to calculate out, here's how many total servings I need, here's the average pounds per plant. And you may get totally different yields from your plants. So that's another reason why I keep saying this is so individual to you. Maybe your tomato plant, I don't know about you, but this seems low to me. 3 pounds per plant seems very low, because I can get a tomato plant that grows like gangbusters, and I might get 20 or 30 pounds. So you might overdo it if you're not careful. So it's going to be important to track this over time as well. But so this shows you how many squares you would need to get that many. And see, I find that to be a pretty low estimate, but I got it from a spreadsheet. I may change that for you guys in the final spreadsheet. So this will tell you how many jars you need. You need 11 jars if you want to have a can of tomato sauce and a can of plain tomatoes each week for a year, plus 3 months. And then down here you'll have the totals. The totals are helpful in terms of how many jars you need. So if you have, if you do your whole thing and realize you need 200 jars, then you may need to get a move on collecting some jars from yard sales and stuff this summer. And same thing, it'll help you plan your freezer space. If you're like, man, I really want to freeze so many things, but I don't have enough space, I might need to save up for a freezer or something. And this doesn't really have fruits, but if you are in an area where you can grow fruit trees, you can use these same type of equations for like fruit trees, so peaches, and even if you can't grow them, if you can buy them at a farmer's market, you can use the same calculations to kind of know how many you need to buy based on, and how many jars you're going to need and all that based on what you want to eat. So here's one little trick. So if you want to fix the coloring, so maybe if you also add it, you know, if you wanted to just have it be every other, go to this little highlight fill spot, and you can make it be no fill to make it white again. And then if you want to make this row gray, then you can do gray. If you have a newer version of Excel, you can turn this into a table, and it does nice color-coded, automated stuff for you, but my version is very old. So then, like I said, if you have a vegetable that's not on this list and you want to look up some of the yields or how much to plant, all these 4 tools down here are where I did get most of that information from to make this spreadsheet. So that should help you out.
And if you have any questions, you can always email me at info at foodstorageMadeEasy.net, and I'd be happy to help troubleshoot if you have trouble with the spreadsheet or if you want any changes or have any questions. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. I hope you have fun planning your garden this year or next year. Oh, I forgot one more quick thing. So I keep saying like it's going to be important what you actually get from your yard. And so I made just a little simple garden tracker. So if you want to put in here, um, you know, tomato, early girl, number of plants I did, 3 plants, then you can say, okay, I harvested like 90 pounds of tomatoes off those 3 plants, and it ended up being 30 cups or whatever. Because sometimes it depends. So if you want to do salsa, some recipes will ask you for cups. Some recipes will tell you pounds. So I like to kind of measure them out in both. But this is just for your, you know, your research, and you can try kind of plan that for this year and use it as a little bit of a tracker. You can print out this page and write in it as you do your harvest. If you want to add, if you harvest multiple times, like so maybe you could do like you harvested 20 this week and then 30 this week and 30 that week or something. If it's spread out, you can do that. And then your next thing maybe is your sweet corn. Oops. Peaches and cream, because that's the best corn, just saying. So there you go. That helps you to be able to track it. You can track it year to year. I have this for 2018. If you want to continue using this, you can just add another sheet and change, garden tracker 2019. You have one next year, and all you do is copy and paste. So if you want to highlight the full spreadsheet, then you can right click, copy, and then right click, paste. There you go. Now you've got your whole new spreadsheet for the next year. This splits it into pages. If you don't like that, you can click the view menu and just click normal. And then I'll go back to more of a spreadsheet format. So if you like Excel and this is your jam, hopefully you'll love obsessing over this. And even if you decide not to go into this much depth, at least I hope this gives you a little food for thought, ha ha ha, pun intended, on how to do your garden plan this year, thinking ahead for storing that, that whole year's worth of food so you can have that delicious, fresh, organic, homegrown food all year long. Because that's one of the big reasons why we garden, I think, is to have that healthy, yummy food that we know where it comes from. I love that. So hope you guys love the rest of the summit. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Make sure to check our website, and we'll have more good things posted for you there, and I'll make sure to have links below for you to download your own copy of the planner. And like I said, shoot me an email or visit our site if you have any more questions about how to use it. All right, signing off. Have a great day.